Good morning, everybody. We're going to do a little Bible study on mocking people or using mockery or mocking humor. And this is not the same as ridiculing a position or an argument or basically a tool of argumentation when you're not focusing in on some flaw or appearance problem. Maybe someone has a certain uh, is partly got an infirmity or deformity or their hair length or maybe their eyes look dark to you. You think they're Satan because they have dark eyes. Whatever it is that you're picking something that can't actually change and you mock them. That, thief on the cross mocks Jesus, he's a loser because he's on a cross like us. I mean, so things you can't change that physically affect you are then being used as, to mock you. And this is designed by the person who's mocking you to provoke anger and hatred. And that will cause the person who's hearing it to sin. And Jesus said, when you use the word rocker or fool or empty head, moron, basically directly to a person, one on one, then you are basically subject to the judgment of hell, as Jesus says. So using this type of statement as a fact or as humor, the humor one is which is a little more tricky, but we need to also address even using mockery in humor. So anyway, it's just weird that I recently had this encounter with someone. I'm not going to go into the name of this person, and this person used some mockery of my eyes. My eyes are brown, and in a photograph they looked dark. And this person said it looked dark like the darkness. How deep is the darkness, satanic darkness of someone who took an oath to obtain a license to be an attorney. So we did a video on that yesterday, but my point is not to uh, uh, you know retaliate or say anything against this person, but to just try to encourage this person as well as all of us is when you want to do an attack piece on somebody who's alive and who's going to watch what you're doing, you have to think about it. It's as if you're face to face to that person, and that is called mockery. It's not a argumentation tool of ridicule of a position or an argument, so it's always fair game to say someone's position is absurd or ridiculous. Their argument doesn't make any sense. That is totally the way you make argument. But to mock someone based on a physical characteristic or trait is basically that's from the evil one. Jesus told us, right? He said, in fact, it subjects you to the judgment of hell. So it's something you have to repent from. You have to change, and the other thing is, I found out psychological counselor contacted me, a Christian one, and said, "Thank you for this article. I'm now using it in my practice." And this person communicated with me via email and was saying how important it is because they see a lot of family situations where husbands, in particular, would be mocking towards their wife, to her appearance, putting the wife down constantly, how she looks, and basically things that she couldn't change. Maybe she was a little overweight, and so just made this woman, the counselor's client was a female, and the woman just felt like dirt. And so we have to realize, men in particular, if you feel something, don't mock your wife. Talk to her one-on-one about the issue. If maybe it is a weight issue, who knows what it might be, or something, but don't mock the person, because that is insulting, and it's not Christian. And we're going to see what the Bible teaches about this. Okay, so let's look at the Bible. And so let me just add one more thing. All racist remarks basically are a form of mockery, usually intentionally for hatred purposes, but it could also be mocking humor, except if it's self-deprecating, which means a person of a certain race can then self-deprecate his own race. So just want to show you there is a form of exception to this, and that's self-deprecation. As long as you have the same physical trait that you're mocking, you get away with it. I don't think it's good. It can be mistaken and misconstrued, but still, that's an exception to the rule of mockery. You can mock as long as you're being self-deprecating at the same time. It's okay. It's funny. But if you are mocking something somebody cannot change about their body, their face, their physicality, that is really evil and going way below the belt of what's proper. And it's not funny. Okay, so here we go. What does God think about when you mock someone? You make another appear ridiculous based on a physical characteristic trait or something that cannot change, whether done one-on-one or in front of others. This is what God says of mocking someone else. The Lord mocks the mockers, but is gracious to the humble. Proverbs 3, verse 34. The Bible has many examples of men wrongly using mockery. It is always criticized as wrong when any comment is made on its propriety. Okay, this people of God have been mocked by onlookers. For example, the disciples were mocked on the day of Pentecost. Others mocking said, they are full of new wine, Acts 2, verse 13. Now, I don't know that that would have been insulting and hurt their feelings, right? By the way, I mean, they're basically the spirit is moving in them and they're acting strangely. And people say, oh, they must be drinking wine or something. I don't know that they would have been highly offended, but maybe they were. Jesus was mocked by the soldiers. They put the robe on him and they say, oh, hail to the king. Now he's bleeding. He's got a crown of thorns on his head. They're mocking him and they're doing it out of hate and to make him feel worse. I mean, he's going to his death and they're not sympathetic at all to him. They're just trying to make him feel lower, even lower than he might otherwise be. Pharisees tried to actually mock Jesus a lot. A lot of their criticisms that he had a demon and all these other things were all intended to mock him. Okay. There was one incident where the punishment of a mocking a man of God over a physical trait, by the way. This incident can be found in 2 Kings 2, verse 23. Elisha was going up to Bethel after he received the double portion of the Spirit from Elijah. Youths came up to him and mocked him, saying, go up and you bald head. So they're basically, these guy has no hair, right? So they're making fun of a physical trait. He can't change that. Go up, you bald head, they said again. They heard about Elijah, the way he went up. They were very sarcastic about that incident and did not hesitate to express their sarcasm. Moments later, 2 bears came out of the wood and mauled them. The lesson for us is do not mock. So you if you make fun of someone's physical characteristic, you should always remember the bears came out. The bears came out. And maybe you can teach someone this lesson or teach your child, the bears came out. Make them think about it so that anytime you mock someone, just remember God made the bears come out and eat these 2 guys who made fun of someone's not having hair on their head. Many people use ridicule without knowing it is improper mockery. And this is the saddest of all because this is what husbands do and people in your social environment may do. Now, I'm not here to rebuke your use of mockery. That's not the point here at the moment. I'm not going to get down to any particular persons. I'm just here to make you aware what is mockery. Then you make the decision whether to use it or not. Okay. Uh, but I hope to help those a little bit on how to cope with mockery. So, how do you react? Because I think that's more, the real common problem is mockery is done in such a way that if you try to reply to it, it actually will be maybe make things worse. Is you're just going to get mocked again and again, so it just doesn't pay off. You have to cope with it first in order to deal with it and not get angry and mad. So that's really probably a whole nother range of responses we've got to talk about. And the Bible actually tells us to not say anything. If you can bear with me a little bit, it's not that you don't always say things, but it's not going to suit you to reply many times. Listen to this. For the Bible tells me not to try to rebuke a mocker. It says in Proverbs 9, verses 8-9, do not rebuke mockers or they will hate you. So if you think they don't like you now, or they don't like your appearance or your weight, or your eyes look too dark, like you have Satan in you or something, don't bother. They're going to just hate you more. Rebuke the wise and they will love you. So that's the answer. Don't rebuke them. Just leave it as is. And maybe, though, hopefully educate them slowly, gradually about God's word. That would be the solution, I think. Okay. So here's some Christian thinkers on the issue of mocking humor. Okay. James Spiegel, in an article on mock humor in Christianity Today, gives this evaluation of mocking humor. Avoid mocking persons because to mock a fellow human being indirectly insults God, since we all bear God's image. So the boys who are making fun of the bald head of Elisha were doing what? They were mocking a physical characteristic, and that was the way God's image reflected itself in Alicia. So don't make fun of how God has made Alicia look because you think somebody looks more normal with hair on their head. So these boys were making fun of him, and maybe he didn't like having a bald head. Who knows? I mean, I've not been bald. I don't think I'd be happy with it. So don't make me feel worse about it, and don't remind me about it. So that would be the right godly thing to do. Moreover, mockery is painful to the person mocked. It's a form of contempt and is wrong no matter how many laughs one might elicit. A Christian website begins a topic in something called Raising Children. Dear ones, have you noticed how prevalent the untrue, crass, and depreciating put-downs rear their ugly heads in Christian circles? Have you too noticed that these put-downs are dressed up demonically to masquerade as humor? And yeah, so that's like, to me, mocking humor is worse than just being mocked. Mock me and I know that you hate me, okay? But to make fun of me in the way I look is really even worse, more hurtful. I think that's wrong to do. A Christian counseling website describes this kind of verbal abuse. Sometimes verbal abuse is disguised as jokes. Although his comments may masquerade as humor, they cut the partner to the quick. The verbal jabs may be delivered crassly or with great skill, but they all have the same effect of diminishing the partner and throwing her off balance. Verbal abuse. Okay, so then is ridicule, mockery, or satire of others about possible faults, different viewpoints, put down humor appropriate or ungodly? The one dishing it out thinks if the recipient does not find it funny, that the problem is with the recipient. So this is mocking humor, which I think is even more insidious than just mockery. And if it hurts their feelings, then the ridiculer thinks the recipient is socially maladjusted and should just accept it. The recipient is thin skinned if they actually spoke up, which will then just lead to more mockery and ridicule. The ridiculer never thinks that such behavior is juvenile, mean spirited, or improper. They believe the problem is all the recipient's perception, not accepting it as a joke. Initially, aside from the question of biblical propriety, the ridiculer should consider that others will not wish to associate or be friends with them. And if we are trying to reach non believers and use such humor, we cannot believe this will gain friends and influence people for Christ. It repels them from us, but the ridiculer knows that. So the issue here is whether the ridiculer, mocker, put down artist should refrain from doing so for moral reasons among other Christians, even when there is no concern about leading them to Christ. Okay, so one Christian counseling website calls put down artists or ridiculers toxic people and describes them as follows. All of us have at one time or another been involved with, worked with, or been related to toxic people. Those are the people who, when you are with them or have to deal with them, never fail to make you feel bad about yourself or say or do something that is critical of you. You could be in the best mood and have the best of intentions, and they will cut you down, make some sarcastic remark, give you a dirty look, or accuse you of something that you never did or said. They have a way of ruining your day, your life, and your good moods. And if you dare to challenge their perceptions of you or something that they say you did, they immediately blame you and make everything your fault. The bottom line is, after you've spent some time with them, you feel lousy, you feel emotionally drained, and you feel sick, sometimes even physically sick. That is why we call such people toxic. The dictionary defines toxic as poisonous. These people are actually poisonous to you. Let's take it a step further. The dictionary defines poison as a substance that can seriously injure an organism or destroy life. Wow. So toxic people can end your very life because because they are that poisonous to you, because they are poisonous to you. Toxic people are dangerous to you. They can be annoying, obnoxious, irritating, and depressing. They can dampen your spirits. They can ruin your reputation. They can get you fired from your job. They can destroy your relationship with spouses, lovers, relatives, friends. They can erode your self-esteem. They can cause you to go into deep depression. They can cause you to get sick, which can take the form of anxiety, panic attacks, and make your life miserable. Yeah, this has serious social repercussions. Is what I think we don't realize. People who directly mock someone or criticize them about something about their body, or they're basically shaming them about things they really can't control, or making up stuff or criticizing them for no good reason is can have lots of deleterious effects. So anyway, they divide these into three categories: the put down artist, the bully, and the master manipulator. The put down artist is constantly making others the butt of jokes in an attempt to deflect attention away from their own shortcomings. These jokes are usually very cruel and abusive. They are not funny. They just are meant to inflict pain on the person being joked about. They will do this in front of others. In fact, that's kind of what to me, I've seen this before. And what that does, it makes the person who's ridiculing you, they think, look better socially in front of others, when many times the other people really are thinking, you're a socially maladjusted person that you have to put down somebody who's your family member or friend in order to make yourself look better in front of others. But in many other contexts, nobody can really judge it too quickly. So you're in this social situation where somebody's ridiculing you. They look better, you think, in the short run, and then you're feeling depressed while you came to a party to have fun. And so this is something people do to just play mess with people's minds. The bully. The bully thrives on dominating and humiliating those they perceive as weaker than them. Then they can be very dangerous if their bullying involves physical attacks. The master manipulator. The master manipulator uses cunnery, cunning, trickery, and deception to control victims. Like the instigator, they will purposely go after any weakness that you have, make fun of it, and then become supercharged when you fall for their trickery. They will actually start a fight and then make it look like you started the fight or argument and then pass that on to everyone else. You come out looking like the bad guy. All right. I want to get into some of the answers here. So, okay. So, when we're dealing with this, it's a kind of form of persecution. It's, for whatever reason, you may not even know what motivates the mocker or the person, but First Peter 4:12 says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fire ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you." So it's not so strange. Just yeah, I think we have to learn how to bear with it and not react to it. Is really the best way. Don't let it. I mean, some people say have a thick skin. I think it's not at your skin level. It's in your heart. You got to not react to it. That's one solution, and the other is just to get away from it. It's like throwing pearls before swine. But let's listen to the suffering this one Christian woman went through, just so that you can understand those of you in this category. One Christian woman talked about a husband who constantly mocked everyone around him, including her, and she decided to patiently endure it. And I'm not saying this is wrong, okay, that she did that, but that's her strategy, and it's just one thing to think about. I have a husband like this. Every time he mocks me, I just thought I will get used to it. Deep inside, it hurts, but it's his nature being sarcastic with everyone around him. I sometimes regret marrying him, and it's really hard to respect him, but it's me who is a Christian, so it's right to turn my other cheek and ignore his flaws, being sarcastic, be tolerant, and pray. And so I comment here. So maybe that is the answer. It is not the persecutor or ridiculer who must change, but the recipient should learn to grin and bear it. But I put a question mark because something's not right about that, right? The Christian counseling website above that define toxic people recommends instead that Christians simply disassociate from such people, citing Jesus' verse on cast the dust off your shoes. So this is what they say. What did Jesus say about such people? He told the disciples to go into a town and preach the gospel and give that town their peace. If the town accepts the disciples, then well and good. But if they did not receive what they had to say, Jesus told the disciples to dust off your shoes and leave that town. He also said, do not cast your pearls before swine. He told them to go where they would be heard, loved, and accepted without having to jump through hoops to get people to listen to them. The same thing goes for the toxic people in your life. You are you, and your real friends do not treat you badly. You can be yourself around them, say and do the same things you want to do without being in fear of their criticism and put downs and manipulative setups. This is because they are not toxic people to you. The bottom line is this: you cannot afford to associate with people who are trying to destroy your very life. Without using a weapon, they are systematically destroying your sense of happiness and well-being and your joy and your peace. So let me just say this to you. Sometimes I have to control people on my YouTube channel, just for example. And when I used to run the website, I would basically have to get to the point where certain people are just abusive and they're not really communicating anymore. So you just have to cut them off. And sometimes in social life, you have to cut people off and cut them out of your life. And it's an extreme alternative to just grinning and bearing it. So it involves different steps. Are you in a committed situation where you have to be in contact with this person? Is it a social necessity, or is it a work necessity? So you have to weigh each situation, whether this option of cutting someone off completely is the best solution, or is grinning and bearing it a better solution? And then, is that going to be grating on your spirit, and so on? Maybe moving on is the way you're going to have to solve the situation. Okay, so let's just see what this one says here. If the toxic people in your life are members of your own family, then God tells you to leave that family. I'm talking about the adult toxic people in your life, not toxic children who you cannot leave until they're at least 18. If your young children are toxic to you, then you need to get them professional help before they turn into one of the above described toxic personalities. All right. Now, what about people who use toxic humor? So basically say, "Yeah, you're not getting my joke. I'm just teasing you." And to me, that's childish. And once you reach a certain level of maturity, so maybe it's 16, 17, 18, you're still using silly mocking humor. But once you reach a certain level, you don't any longer use that in one-on-one relationships. How should the one who is accused of being a toxic humorist evaluate their own behavior? Should the response be of the listener to disassociate from the emotional abuser, or should the humorist to conclude their humor is inappropriate, or both? So I say this. First, the ridiculer must realize there may be a fine line between a put down that is intended humorously or a put down that is subtly meant to send a message under the guise of humor. So, if you make some comment about your wife's weight or something like that, that's cruel and it's not very funny, but you think it's funny and you're making fun of it. It's not funny. So you have to think about these things. And the recipient may not be able to tell the difference. And in the end, either way, such humor is inappropriate. So let's start with the assumption you're making poisonous put downs that hurt, but you, the ridiculer, believe it should be understood as a jest. Your overweight condition makes me sick. Ha ha, I'm joking. You never come into work on time. Ha ha ha, I'm just joking. If you are the one accused of using humor as a verbal abuser, how do you self evaluate, especially if you are a follower of Christ? Okay. Verbal abuse is assault with angry words, even if couched as humor, even if you believe it is truly funny and not mean spirited. Why? So I'm trying to talk to these people who use this to manipulate people, because such jokes are simply not funny, and this humor is just a pretense for an attack. Even if you really did intend it as humor, "You are so fat I could scream" is a humorously spoken, but the words are simply not funny. Any adult knows how such high school juvenile humor is a bad attempt at humor. Hence, anything that goes along with it can only be construed by a rational person as an angry, mean-spirited put-down, even if the speaker truly does not intend the words to be heard that way. Thus, your belief as the ridiculer that you can answer, "I was just joking," does not justify the put-down. It is never funny to point out and exaggerate a flaw, a peccadillo, a viewpoint even, by mockery. It is properly this is one-on-one when you can inflame anger, okay? It is properly understood and construed as malicious statements, even if they are not. That's because the speaker either is too juvenile to realize it is not funny and hence it is improper, or the speaker is an adult and should know that such humor is not funny and thus can properly be interpreted as designed to stir up anger. Either way, they're mean, evil, and provocatory words. And Proverbs 29, verse 22 says, "An angry man stirs up strife, and a hot tempered man abounds in transgression." So, again, if you speak anger at your neighbor, you're going to cause your neighbor to get angry. So, yeah. And it's a little tricky when you're doing YouTubes because you don't see 99% of your audience. So you have to kind of think sometimes not to use certain kind of language in a YouTube, even though that's not the same thing. But one-on-one, definitely, or email contacts, or things that are someone's going to watch a particular video you're doing. You can't talk about them to ridicule them. And that's the whole point I'm trying to make here, is you got to restrain yourself from doing things to retaliate to people about people. Okay. All right. So I think that's about it. I just want to say is, Paul was one of the things that why certain Christians will defend mockery is because Paul used it, and it's really kind of bizarre. So I just thought I'd mention that. Um, so as a result, Paulinists defend mockery as an honorable debating tactic. Now, again, I, I'm I'm not going to say debating isn't wrong to do that, but the way he was doing it, he was writing a letter to people who are in a crowd of people, and this letter is being read out loud. How do you think you would have felt? I'm going to show you what he's talking about. How would you have felt if you were one of the people who were advocating in this group of at Galatia that, if we want to go do Passover, we have to be circumcised, or if we want to go to the temple, we have to be circumcised. Or maybe you were even advocating something that was not needed. You were saying, well, you know what, to be a real Christian, we should get circumcised. So let's say you've got 2 points that are legitimate and one guy who doesn't have a legitimate point. Now, listen to any one of those three viewpoints still are human beings who have feelings. And how would you feel if from the pulpit you heard this message? Uh, this is Paul in Galatians 5:12. I wish those agitators would go so far as to castrate themselves. Wow. So this is praised in one of these, Paul can do no wrong articles. Another example of such mockery is found in Paul's writings. Paul is known to be an excellent debater. He knew that one of the techniques employed in debating is to mock the opponent. In the 5th chapter of Galatians, he employs this technique when he tries to show the mistake of some men who advocated circumcision. He first explains that circumcision avails nothing. So Paul actually had the view that not even to attend Passover and not even to go to the temple did you need to get circumcised. And if you think I'm wrong, take a look at Ephesians, where he says the middle wall of separation, that the temple has been taken away. He meant spiritually. It's still there every day. He didn't have authority to go to the temple and pull it down. He's saying it just really isn't there. So he is spiritually saying you can go to the temple if you wanted to. You can do anything you want, and you don't need to be circumcised to go to somebody's Passover meal. He's just telling you the whole law is gone. It's just nothing. It's nothing anymore. So to mock these people, he then said, I wish those agitators would go so far as to castrate themselves. Clearly, Paul does not think much about salvation by surgery. Okay. Well, some of those points of views were not salvation related. Those were the people who wanted to go to Passover or go to the temple. Or basically, though, they were sin issues. Like, I don't want to commit a sin by going to Passover and not being circumcised, or go to the temple and commit a sin and enter uncircumcised. And remember, the consequence of Paul's command there and his statement here was Trophimus from Ephesus, who heard the middle wall separation was no longer in existence. He passes through the middle wall middle wall at the temple of Jerusalem, and it created this huge conflagration. Its uncircumcised man is now in the sacred part of the temple, and people will come rushing to find Paul, and he claims he was in a ceremonial bath when that happened, so he wasn't responsible. But that's the whole trial. The trial where he appeals to Nero is because that action happened and the Jews were outraged and blamed Paul, but he said, I have an alibi. I wasn't there when he did that. I was in a ceremonial bath. So that's in Acts 21, 22, and then through the end of Acts. And then there's a trial, and that we don't see that in the book of Acts, but that's coming next in front of Nero, where Paul got acquitted, just so you know. None of the witnesses apparently probably showed up. It's too far away to go to Rome. All the people from Jerusalem have to show up. So anyway, okay, I think that's it. There's counseling resources in the article I have on this online. But I think I'll leave it at that. I just hope that this will help those who are suffering under it. You've got a couple of options. You can either completely separate, or you can continue to grin and bear it, do what you can, and plan an exit from that situation. It seems to me most of the time is God tells you, don't try to rebuke the mocker. They're just going to get worse, and they're going to hate you for it. So you have to just make your own decision on how you're going to handle it. So God bless. I hope this helped everybody. Take care. Ciao. Bye.